We're live. Hi, Dylan. Welcome to Venture with Grace.
Hey, great. Thanks.
Okay, so to start our show, I would love for the audience to get to know you a little bit more. So you started your career as like a community manager, and then now you're managed one of the most popular venture slash tech community at South Park Common. Why don't we start with like what were some core lessons that you've learned early on in your career, kind of shape you into who you are today?
I'd actually take it. First of all, thank you for the kind words. Thank you for having me. I take it a step back that I started all of this by throwing parties in high school.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
I think that a core thread of like everything I've done so far has been like bringing people together in a way that creates value for everyone that comes.
Mhm.
And that started from literally throwing parties when I was in high school, events when I was in university. And then I started a charity when I graduated college in 2016, all around the same thread, which is have a single goal or mission, bring similar people around who wanted to be a part of it. Some of it could have been like going to a party in a nightclub, but some of it also was advocating for policy change with my charity. And I just realized that makes me really happy and passionate, and allowed me to grow into venture, which is, another aspect of venture is identifying people and helping people. And part of identifying people is curating groups and meeting the people you want to work with. And then once you invest, helping them meet other people, whether it's customers, other investors, or potential hires. So the thread has been the same, which is throw events that people love.
Love. Okay, so speaking of throwing events, you guys just did a talk with the CEO of Roblox. Why don't we talk about like I feel like South Park Commons is such a interesting community. It's like very community driven, and then there's a lot of fellows and stuff like that. For the audience who may not be familiar with it, like yeah, maybe we could start with like what is South Park Commons and what are some like what does a program kind of look like for the entrepreneurs?
Yeah, so South Park Commons was started by two of the first employees at Facebook. They joined Facebook in 2005. They worked very closely with 19-year-old Mark Zuckerberg,
Mhm.
helped build Facebook together with them. And then in 2010, Aditya and Ruchi started a company together called Cove, which they sold to
Mhm.
Dropbox and helped scale Dropbox to going public. So,
Mhm.
after two incredible runs of building and scaling Facebook and Dropbox, um, they were in a position in their careers where they were both incredibly interested about where technology was going, but also no longer wanted to or needed to be employed in a traditional sense. So they started South Park Commons in their living room as a community for other people who wanted to come together and learn about technology, and explore, you know, the early research in machine learning and AI,
Mhm.
blockchain and cryptocurrencies, just surrounded by other smart people. And they didn't want to have jobs, but they, didn't want to tell their friends that they were unemployed. So they said, "Oh, I'm at South Park Commons. That is my job."
Mhm.
And since then, we've been able to grow and scale that, and we've raised venture funds to do it. But at its core, it's still a community and a space for people who have left
Mhm.
their job, dropped out of school, sold their company, who want to come and surround themselves with other really smart, really curious people, and
Mhm.
figure out what's their life mission to accomplish. And that's what our membership is. And we're now live in San Francisco, New York, and Bangalore, where we bring build density of this.
Mhm.
And then our funds, which we just announced a $270 million fund three, is to accelerate the projects and companies that come out of the community. And we do that,
Mhm.
yeah.
Oh, no, no. I was gonna say, I think congrats on the new fund. I wonder when I guess like when it started as a community, since like you guys are doing a lot of like these high profile talks from like, all these like big tech CEOs and well known like public like tech figures in general. I guess like what is the concept of I think number one is what is the goal of I mean I'm sure the goal is to like help the tech community as well as like help founders to um I guess like build better product learning from the leaders. I guess like um one is like what is like the common threads of these tech leaders, like what are some goals from these conversations, and number two is like I guess like from a founder perspective, like what does a program kind of look like, because I know a lot of my friends are I don't know if it's called South Park Common Fellows, or like there was like a lot of like people who are involved in the community. So I heard it's like a non-dilutive equity community, and then like how is that related to the fund itself?
So the community is completely free.
Mhm,
We don't take any equity. We don't invest. Um, our promise to you is the space, the programming, the people, and our expectation is that you come in and you contribute. So,
mhm,
you're spending every day in the space. You're sharing your experiences, your network, you're learning with other people. That's the membership, the community.
mhm,
Fellowship is where we give an investment of $1 million to 20 teams twice a year. Actually, our application's just opened for that.
mhm,
You don't need an idea, you don't need customers, you don't need product. What you need is curiosity and ambition and conviction in yourself to build something great.
mhm,
So that's where it's a more formal investment into an individual or a team, where we're actually giving capital and taking equity. Uh,
mhm,
to your question on the speakers, I mean, we do all types of events at SBC. The big name speakers, in the 14 months or so I've been with SBC, we've had Sam Altman, Mark
mhm,
Zuckerberg, Mike Krieger, Satya Nadella, David
mhm,
Baszucki, Scott Belsky. I mean, you name it. A big person in tech has spoken at SPC. That is really a chance for us to share, to use the network of South Park Commons to have those people share their story widely. We
mhm,
most record those, we promote them, and the common thread I think there is we're obviously hearing from these people when they're already majorly successful, but our
mhm,
questions are less about like, tell us what it's like to be the successful today, but what was your version of the negative one journey that got you
mhm,
here? What were the
mhm,
pivots that you went through? What were the hard times that you went through? What is it, when you started the company, that had doubts about, or had to learn or pivot or
mhm,
change?
mhm,
In Dylan Fields with Figma, or Dave Baszucki with Roblox, they all were building something completely different from what the
mhm,
company ended up being, and that's like the journey that we really empathize with. On the programming side, we do a lot more private, smaller events that are only for the SPC community and founders. So that's the stuff that, are not as high profile shared online, where we'll bring in people to, do more off the record workshops, more off the record stories on things. And like that is where it's just for SPC.
For sure. I wonder for the public figures, like what was the process of like inviting them? So I think we briefly chat about this
Mhm.
offline before, but like I wonder since like, I feel like inviting Stadia or like these like a really like or Mark Zuckerberg, like they're very busy people. Like how do you guys I mean, I'm sure I feel like Mark Zuckerberg is like a no-brainer. It's like you guys are the founders are kind of like core employees of Facebook early on, but I think for the other public figures, like what is the process of like inviting them? And then what are some, I guess, like what do you feel like the like, very high profile public figures, like what do they kind of like feel like they're getting out of it? Is that more of like giving back from the community, or I guess like what is the kind of like mindset for them as well?
It's a great question. And actually, I think the reason that they do it and they enjoy it is because our audience is highly curated to be filled with engineers, technologists, and very early stage entrepreneurs. Um, Even though we have 200-300 people at these events, like we
Mhm,
get 1,000 applications to join. Like we really select who can attend, and I think it's a very high dense audience that these speakers are they enjoy speaking to most, but don't often get to speak to. I mean, if you go to
mhm,
traditional events, it's usually just filled up with other VCs or
mhm,
or people looking for jobs. I think it's
mhm,
very rare that these folks get to speak to such a curated room of really smart, really technical, really ambitiously curious folks. And then obviously, once you've had one or two big names, it becomes a lot easier to say, well, Zook and Satya and Sam spoke here, you should too.
mhm.
Um, and I think that so far, every event we've done has been, a packed house. The content we've shared has been great. So it's created demand that actually more people want to be speaking at in SPC.
For sure. For I guess like for the private event, I guess like what are some you mentioned there's like workshops and everything else. So first of all, like I guess for the fellowship itself, for like the 1 million investment, is that for 20 teams? Is that like 1 million for each team, or is this more towards like 1 million split into like 20 teams? And how I guess like how is the team like being selected? What is like the selection process kind of look like for you guys?
Yeah, and it's $1 million commitment investment to
Mhm.
each team that we invest
Mm.
in through our founder fellowship program.
Mhm.
Um, I think that the interesting question is how we evaluate them. I think
Mhm.
I've said this a few times, but our evaluation feels more like a job interview than it
Mhm.
does a pitch, because we really are trying to get to know you as a person or you as a team and your ambitions and your background and how you got there,
Mhm.
because we think that's going to have a stronger influence on the type of company you build
Mhm.
than market size and early product attraction that you might have in the few months you've been working on it. And it's because we know that things change, like shit happens.
Mhm.
Maybe the market you're going after turns out to not be that good. Maybe there's 50 other competitors that pop up. Maybe you identify something completely new that you hadn't even thought of a month ago, and you're like, this is a way bigger pie to go chase. And we want to back teams that we want to be on that journey with. We call it the
Mhm.
school or the -1, but really work with you however long it takes to like find the biggest mountain to climb. Um, so yeah, I mean, having worked at two funds prior to SBC, where like, most of my time was spent talking to founders about the market size, the traction, the competition. Like here, I get to really deeply understand the motivations and history of a person,
Mhm.
um, but when we're making our decision.
For sure. I like that you said it. It's like kind of like a job interview than the like the founder interview, I guess, or like the founder pitch. How how would you kind of like structure it? So like at the beginning, do you so a lot of like these like programs start with like, tell us about your biggest accomplishment to date, and like people throw in the, 500 million impressions or something numbers on there. But like I wonder what is a I'm sure like a lot of listener would probably want to apply South Park comment at some point. Like, is there any tips for like, pitching themselves or like any like obviously I'm sure you will look for like grit or like the technical mode and everything, but what does that kind of look like in terms of like the interview itself?
Everyone has different flavors of
Mhm.
asking these questions.
Mhm.
Aditya loves to ask applicants like, what's their most
Mhm.
contrarian take? What's their most
Mhm.
contrarian view? How do they think? What's something in the world that they think about different than everyone else?
Mhm.
Um, Earlier in the week, I had coffee with Andy Weissman at USV, and he said that they look for three things that I think are very consistent to us, which is curiosity. So, like, what are the
Mhm.
things? What are the big things that you
Mhm.
want that you see differently?
Mhm.
Taste. So, amongst all the things that you're curious about, like, how do you pick the one to pursue? And then speed or velocity. So once
Mhm.
you have that thing, once you have your North Star that you're chasing, like how
Mhm.
fast can you go to get there? And I think those are the core principles that I'm trying to understand. But the framing of question that we ask to get there can vary on person to person. And the beauty of SPC is, we're not consensus. We're
Mhm.
a team of people with different experiences, and we all think about things differently. And it allows us to bring in entrepreneurs or community members of different types at SPC and really build diversity of business.
For sure. I wonder for in terms of like for your experience at SBC, like what is the differences between like, I'm sure you work at like, Expa. I feel like that's another great one that as like you guys incubate a lot of like I guess second time founders or like the more like seasonal founders. I guess like maybe we could start with like, what is Expa like? And then what are something that's like cohesive with what you're doing at SPC today when it comes to interacting with founders and helping them or picking them.
Yeah, from all three funds I've worked at, so I was at Founders Factory in the UK before Expa,
Mhm.
and then Expa, and now South Park Commons is, essentially in all those cases we were the first partner
Mhm.
to founders along the journey, and
Mhm.
in most cases um, you're investing in a team of one or two people. So you
Mhm.
become a co-founder, because when shit happens, like they
Mhm.
really only have you and their lawyer to talk to, maybe their mom or maybe their financial partners,
Mhm.
their bankers. So in all three cases, I've been very fortunate that even though I'm not a co-founder of these businesses, I get to be treated as such.
Mhm.
I'd say that the difference that what I was doing again at Founders Factory and Expa is there was a lot more about the idea, and the here's the market, here's the idea, here's the reason to go chase it. Bring a
Mhm.
team around it. If you want to do something in healthcare, who's from healthcare? If you want to do something in fintech, okay, like where in fintech were they from? And it was much more market and idea driven. I think SPC is very unique in that we're very people driven.
Mhm,
So as I said, like I haven't worked anywhere before where all I want to do is understand the individual and their motivations and like work with them on three different, in some cases, three different ideas at once to
mhm,
pursue, at least at the beginning, to identify what. So I think that the difference really is that at Expa, we, you know, they were, I was on the external investing side, and but Expa was very well known for incubating businesses. It was very much like do research, where's an opportunity, and then go find someone. Where
mhm,
at SPC, it's much more about like just bring exceptionally smart people together, and
mhm.
empower them to figure out the best thing to go pursue.
For sure. Going back to South Park comment, so for the fellowship, is that like 1 year you invest in 20 companies, or is this more towards like, every quarter and there's like a demo day or something, or like how is the program actually being structured for the fellows?
So we run the Founder Fellowship twice a year,
Mhm,
uh, but we do fund teams all year round.
mhm,
Uh, but the program itself doesn't have any like fixed deadlines. Like we don't have demo
mhm,
days. We will help teams fundraise when they're ready to fundraise because this is something I truly believe in. Every team's on their own journey. Every team has their own timeline, and like someone might be ready to fundraise in 10 days, and someone might take them 10 months to get to that point. And we don't want to rush you. We don't want to give you any artificial deadlines, any artificial expectations. So our promise to the teams in our fellowship is, as long as they're committed and moving forward, like we're here to work with you on those timelines. So there is no fixed agenda there. But yeah, we run the official program twice a year. And actually, as I mentioned, I'll keep saying it, our applications are open on our website now for this
mhm.
fellowship.
Yeah, for sure. I wonder, so for the since like you guys interact with the founders daily at the um either from the membership program or the fellowship program, what are some like main things that you're seeing people are building? And also like I know that like you're currently based in New York, like what are some interesting trends that you're seeing compared to like New York and San Francisco founders?
It's a great question. I do split my time with San Francisco and New
Mhm,
York. As a proud Canadian from Toronto,
mhm,
New York is very close to home. So I think that in New York, you have a very interesting overlap between like the creative class and the technology class. So a lot of
mhm,
our teams in New York are pursuing things that are very consumer facing, like what are new consumer interfaces? How are we going to interact?
mhm,
How is the human going to interact with technology moving forward? Because of the external influences here. We also have some teams in New York pursuing healthcare. We have some teams in financial services, and obviously yesterday they announced their Series A, but Profound,
mhm,
the first company that was doing visibility or SEO for AI search is in New York. Say in the
mhm,
Bay in San Francisco, we have a lot more deeply technologist teams who are driven by solving technical problems.
mhm,
Uh, we've been trying to do a lot more hardware adjacent company building as well. So I've been spending a lot of my time with teams in robotics. Could be software for robots or hardware for robotics. Teams interfacing with drones. Teams
mhm,
building devices for construction projects. But we think hardware is going to be an enabler of data
mhm,
collection and of AI, and a moat in itself, given the cost and technical difficulty of getting started there.
mhm.
Uh, but we're generalists. We're really open to learning about any new problem people want to pursue, as long as it sounds novel and large and huge. And
Mhm.
I would say, I don't want to speak for everyone at SBC, but maybe not as interested in like incremental B2B SaaS improvements or vertical AI improvements.
For sure. I wonder, so for example, for since you like mentioned Profound from who just raised like a Series A, are they, I guess, like the members, or are they more of like a fellow? And from the fellowship, I guess, like how does a portfolio construction kind of look like? Is that like, since you mentioned like it's 20 million per um badge, and then there's two cohort that's like kind of call it like a 40 million and stuff, like since you raised like a $200 million fund, that's let's even like for 3 years there must be like saved for like follow-ons and stuff, like do you guys primarily only back the fellows companies, or like other company as well?
So
And yeah.
I I'm not going to speak about our portfolio construction.
Mhm,
Um, our goal is to just be the best partner to founders
Mhm,
at the earliest stages,
mhm,
and support them in the best that we can, through the fellowship or otherwise.
mhm,
Um, but to your question about Profound, they came to SPC as members.
mhm,
They met in the community, the Dylan and James. They then participated in the fellowship, the founder
mhm,
fellowship program. They then raised their seed round, and now their Series A round. So they're a perfect example of like join the community, figure out what you want to pursue. When you're ready, do the fellowship, get funding, and then grow and get into seed, Series A, and hopefully beyond. And we have many examples like that. But yeah, Profound is one of those.
I wonder, so for example, when they were at the South Park Common Fellowship, like um what is the, I guess like for the, I guess not fellowship, but I guess like from the membership perspective, um when should they start begin to apply or to come in, or is that just like as early as like I have an idea, I'm still working at Google, or like is this more towards like people who already quit their job and then they were just there to co-work? And for the I guess for the membership itself, like does it have any like does people have to meet like a certain threshold or benchmark to apply for the membership, or like just a fellowship?
I would say people can apply at any point. Really, it's we're assessing like when are you convicted in yourself to want to go and do this full time. And you can do it whilst you're still in school. You can do it while you're still employed. You can do it while you're still running your previous company.
Mhm.
Once you join SPC, it's a full time commitment. Uh,
Mm,
so you can apply before you've left your previous thing. Spend time
mhm,
with us, get to know us, learn about what SPC would look like for you, and then once you're but in order to join SPC, it is a full time commitment. So,
mm.
if we get to the point where we want to do this together, then yeah, like the expectation would be that you're able to commit full time.
I wonder, so for let's say a profan, like to, I guess like what is the diligence process for them look like for you from like the, I guess the from the fellowship program? Obviously applying to get in is like a very important thing, but I guess like what does the diligence process look for the partners or the people who are interviewing them to filter out the team or the idea and stuff?
Yeah, as I said, when for our, it's the same for every fellowship team. It's not about the idea really.
Mhm.
It's
The
the
interview.
Yeah, yeah, it is the interview. I mean, it's for all of our teams in the fellowships that we do, and um, I would say a lot of the teams that come into our fellowship don't even have a full fledged idea yet. Um,
Mm. I wonder, so like what is the cadence for you guys to like kind of like follow up with them to after, let's say you put in like the $1 million check. Um, do you guys like kind of like check in with them every month, or like do people have to work at South Park Commons like co-working space, or like how do you kind of like after investing with the company, what are some ways to like track their progress as well as like helping them along the way?
yeah, for me at least, when I'm talking to someone about South Park Commons, I say that the more you put in, the more you get out. So
Mhm,
like you shouldn't join SPC membership or fellowship unless you want to be in the space, you want to be
mhm,
in the community, you want to spend time with the other people around. And I would say most percent of the time, like people want more than less. So
mhm,
we try to stay as close as we can to everyone at SPC membership or fellowship to understand their progress until they no longer need us.
mhm.
I wouldn't say that we're ever the reason that they don't have time and attention from us. It's more of like when they want it, and I encourage. And I don't think that's just about us. Like, to be honest, I think anytime you do a program, go to an academic program or raise venture money or whatever, like the more you ask from them, the more you'll get from them. So it's like a lean in to get.
For sure. I wonder, since I feel like compared to Expa, so like you have made a bunch of investments there, like from um KnockApp or like MXR, or like how do you I guess maybe if you could walk us through like one company that you have like invested in, from like meeting the founder to evaluating the team to like thinking about like I guess like winning the deal to like exiting.
Yeah, I mean, it's It's evolving, and I'm still early in my investment career, so my answer is not going to necessarily be perfect. But I think um, there's infinite opportunities.
Mhm,
Uh, there is a lot of people starting, especially now with how easy AI has made spinning up technology. Like there's always more
mhm,
founders. Um, a big part of the job is sourcing, but then a bigger part of the job is after sourcing is choosing. Just because as like a traditional investor, at any given point you could be meeting 5 to 25 companies a
mhm,
week. So how do you choose who to spend time with, and how do you choose where to lean in? At Expa, I was very fortunate to meet John Ney, the founder of Norm AI, another really great New York company, just as he kicked off his fundraise. And that was the case of like immediately met him and thought he was a special entrepreneur. Previously founded a company called Brooklyn Investment Group. This was his next company, and his thesis was, as more and more companies want to use AI, companies in regulated industries need to be compliant about how they do it.
mhm.
So there it was, it was a pretty obvious case of you meet this exceptional entrepreneur. Um, he has a very strong thesis on like what step change is happening, um, in the world, and why there's a technology problem that he needs to go solve, and he hit the ground running. And you have a couple of days or weeks in that case to make a decision. You go out to your network and you talk to potential buyers of the product. Is this a problem that you see? Is this something that is on your horizon and agenda? And everyone I spoke to was like, yes, like this is something that we're all trying to think about. Like um, how do we let our teams compliantly use AI when our compliance, in some cases, we only have one person on the compliance team who's doing a lot of the work manually. So, it's fortunate there to be able to invest in the seed round. And, he's since gone on to grow the business and raise subsequent rounds of funding. And who knows, it's still very early, but, that could be, it's a good example. If you meet someone special, they identify a problem that no one else is really talking about, but is certainly needed. And Profound was similar. I mean, when they started the company, you talk to CMOs, and CMOs were like realizing that Google search was going to be displaced by AI search, billions of dollars a year spent on search engine optimization for ads on Google, but no clue what to do for how their brand surfaces, or how to influence how their brand surfaces on AI search. And they were the first people to be talking about it. And James, the CEO, his previous company, was in influencer marketing, so he knew all these CMOs, and he knew the problem was real. And you want to hear something that's novel that no one else is talking about, but it makes sense as you hear it, like, oh shit, like this is going to be a huge hair on fire problem for lots of people.
For sure. I feel like there's a lot of people who are kind of like innovating in the future of like advertising space in general. What is you guys take on like the future of advertising? So like the other day at a gradient event, like I met a founder that were building um like personalized ads. So technically like so for each person the ads are it's like showing up differently. And for obviously I feel like for SEO it's like very important. Like there's a few other companies are building it like a similar to adjacent space. I guess like from the technology or like product standpoint, like what are something that you guys found it was like interesting in Profound compared to like these other, SEO, ChatGPT SEO
I
companies.
actually think what's interesting is that consumer behavior is changing,
Mhm,
and that like I think AI was we talked about the internet
mhm,
moment and the mobile moment, and now we're in the AI moment. And I think the places to where consumers are spending time
mhm,
is changing. um, so that's why I think
mhm,
advertising is becoming uh, a hot investment area. But it's just one of. I think it's actually
mhm,
the same thing applies to anything that touches the consumer, and that could be in e-commerce, but it can also be in dating apps. It can be in wealth management. It can be in how we stream content. It can be in how news is delivered. The platform, it's a massive platform shift. So I do agree. We probably all eventually will be having personalized ads shown to us, even if it's the exact same product. I think we're gonna, I interviewed Scott Belsky at SPC a few months ago, and he talked about, why can't I go to a website that already knows my shoe size and my t-shirt size when I'm purchasing? Why do I have to, every time I go, like I put in my credit card number, I have to put in my size and my color preferences? So like I think that the way we engage with commerce is going to be smarter and more dynamic. And I'm certainly curious to learn about more teams that are trying to solve for this and build for it and have a pretty strong hypothesis on what that's going to look like. I can say I know it's going to look different, but I don't know how it will look. So I want to meet people that have like very strong, interesting opinions on what that future looks like.
I wonder, so like for I guess like for the founder's background, since like I feel like people who are building in ads could look very differently than other people who are building in like the just like generous ad space and like just any other, let's say, security tech company and everything else. Like what are the questions that like you feel like from the interview that you would ask differently for each person, or is there like a cohesive ones that you guys keep will try to ask everyone? Besides, like, one of the ones that you mentioned was like, what is the contrarian views and what are some stuff that you felt like would was very useful for you guys to like kind of like filter out if they're the right team to build it?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question, and to give some other concrete examples, it's like there's lots of people building software for lawyers or
Mhm,
software for accountants or AI for
mhm,
doctors. Um, I think the way you pitch that can be like, I want to build incremental workflow improvements for them, which I think tells a lot about how you think about the problem versus like, no, I actually think the way we are going to engage with medicine or the way we're going to engage with documents or the way we're going to engage with banking is going to look completely different. And I want to build, an AI native law firm or an AI native doctor or a
mhm,
new ledger, a new financial ledger that doesn't just sit behind your e-commerce site, but it
mhm,
actually like is a completely different interface
mhm,
entirely. So I think it's, you know, I think the way someone positions the solution that they want tells a lot about how they're gonna solve it. And actually a lot of times you can't come from the industry to have that view. You
mhm,
need a fresh pair of eyes, and sometimes it can be very young people. So like, we're very comfortable working with people that have dropped out of college, who because sometimes their ignorance allows them to look at things with fresh eyes in an
mhm,
aggressive way, um, or sometimes it's just someone who's completely like not native to the industry that they're coming from, so they can look at it how everyone else is doing it and say, why are we doing it the same way? Like we can actually take technology now and do it completely differently. So,
mm,
and that can apply to health tech, fintech, compliance tech, all of it. So it's you learn a lot about the type of business that they want to build here by how they approach the solution.
for sure. I wanna so this is such a random question, but like I feel like you previously worked in England or like the UK. So like what are some like differences between like the UK startup environment versus the US? Also,
Yeah,
you're Canadian. I don't know which country we should start first.
I think that the Canadian and the UK ecosystems are a lot more similar, in my opinion, than the US. I think that um, unfortunately, there's less risk capital in Canada and the UK, and as a result, there have been some outlier businesses, obviously Shopify in
Mhm,
Canada, and Revolut or Munzo in the UK, and some European, a few more European companies like Spotify and UiPath. But I think that what I've seen is most interesting is that the expats, the British European expats or the Canadian expats
mhm,
in America have been exceptionally successful. And I think that for two reasons. It's because they've left their home country. So they've said, I'm going to leave my friends, I'm going to leave my family, I'm going to move somewhere because I want to
mhm,
pursue something um, incredibly difficult, but incredibly ambitious.
mhm,
Um, so you're self-selecting for that, and they're doing it in an environment that has the capital and infrastructure to enable that. Where unfortunately, the capital markets, whether it's like the VC dollars or otherwise, and they're just slower, they're smaller, and people want to see more traction earlier on. The round sizes are smaller. People are less willing to take a salary cut to work at a startup for equity versus going to work at a safer job at like big tech or a big four consulting firm in Canada and the UK. And I think part of it also is cost of living, and given that they're to a degree both have more welfare infrastructure, the cost of education and healthcare, that people don't need to take as much risk to pursue, quote unquote, the American dream. So
Mm.
I want there to be more success locally in Canada and the UK, but I think actually the alpha is in finding the British or Canadian founders, or French or German founders, or Indian founders, or South African founders who have moved to the US to do this. I think, and they also bring a very diverse perspective as well.
I wonder, so like, who are like the top funds in the UK? So obviously, I mean, I heard of like Felix Capital or like, so like, I think I've heard of like some European funds, but like, I actually don't know like who is like the most like, I would say like, the Sequoia of England.
Well, you're going to get me in trouble. There are good funds in the UK and Europe, but most multi-stage funds have presences everywhere. So,
Mhm,
I mean, Index and Excel are European, so they have
mhm,
big presences in the UK. A16Z, Sequoia, Bessemer, Lightspeed, they all have partners in the UK, and I really like them. I think
mhm,
those are more international funds that have coverage everywhere. I think
mhm,
the local ecosystem in the UK, it changes depending on who you ask, but
mhm,
there's stuff like Local Globe that's been around for a while, that's been successful. Seed Camp, which
mhm,
is in the UK and Europe, that's been around, that's been successful. Balderton at the Series A. Like, I would say that there are decent funds out there. First Minute Capital, which is sort of associated with the fund Founders Factory that I worked at when I
mhm.
was in the UK, but uh, they're very local. They're very locally oriented. I think that the reality is, like, a lot of the multi-stage funds just have a good enough presence and exposure there.
I wonder, so like, what are the difference I guess, like, also, like, what do you think are, like, the sourcing mechanism kind of look like from for these, like, different geographic location? So for, like, Silicon Valley, I would just say, like, I feel like a lot of people would just look into, a big company's first employee or let's say the, Stanford machine learning engineer or something like that. So, like, I wonder, is there any geo hubs and for, like, New York or for London or like not geo hubs, I guess like the
Talent hub.
sourcing mechanism. Yeah, exactly, talent hubs.
Yeah, I mean, I think New York now has pretty mature talent hubs. I think that Ramp obviously has like a huge talent base as their HQ here in New York, but also during COVID, a lot of West Coast firms opened HQs here. So,
Mhm,
Meta's AI office is here, Uber is here, Spotify from Europe, like their HQ is here. There's Google has a giant office here. So I think New York is pretty similar to San Francisco to a degree, and I think that the proximity to the Boston universities, MIT,
mhm,
Harvard, and then NYU and Columbia. There's a lot of talent here in New York. I think the problem in the UK and Canada is there aren't as many unicorns where people were early employees and could leave. I mean, and so far in Canada, really, like Shopify is like the only example of that in
mhm,
Toronto. Um, and in the academic, you know, I'm a big supporter of the University of Waterloo. I think that the
mhm,
University of Waterloo has become probably the second biggest employer of technology outside of
mhm,
Stanford. The problem that Waterloo has is that these really, really smart kids graduate,
mhm,
and they are offered jobs in the Bay or New York, paying 3 times as much as anyone in Canada can offer.
mhm,
So, or is willing to offer at the engineering level. So, there's a big brain drain from Waterloo to San Francisco or from Waterloo to New York, and I understand it. Like, why should they go take a job earning a third of what they can make in SF or New York, and then those people go on to become founders in SF and New York afterwards. So I think in order for Toronto to have a better to maximize the value of that is, like, I think they have to have companies willing to pay to compete with the U.S. salaries for the
mhm,
engineering grads out of Waterloo or the
mhm.
University of Toronto now.
I wonder, so like, what was your path to like leave Canada to go to like the UK and the US?
Yeah, so to go to the UK was easy because Canadians are part of the Commonwealth. So until you're 35, you can work there without
Mhm,
sponsorship. So I
mm,
knew after as I said, I started my charity in Toronto, and I was
mhm,
working at an incubator for nonprofits called the Center for Social Innovation, surrounded by entrepreneurs. And I was like, I want to work in in startups, in venture capital, but there were just no opportunities in Toronto for me. This was back in 2016. So moving to the UK was a lot easier as a Canadian. So I was able to move there, and fortunately was able to get a job, Founders Factory, for a couple of years, which was my entry into the ecosystem. And then once once you quote unquote broken into VC and start to do deals and build your network, it's a lot easier to move. And then with Expa, I was able to move from the UK to New York. But my goal was always to get to the US. It just I had to go through the UK given the visa as a Canadian. There just is not as many opportunities in other ecosystems for young people to get into VC.
Do you want to talk more about like your nonprofit era? Like what have you built? And then like, how do you translate that into like, I know that you're a founder of a company before as well. Like, how did that kind of like shaped out for you?
Yeah, a lot of people I believe that being this founder of a charity or a nonprofit is very similar to being a founder of a company. Of like a venture-backed company. Obviously running my nonprofit, I didn't raise any money. We got a bunch of government funding and some CSR budgets, but I never had to raise venture. I never, properly had any full-time employees to manage. It was mostly volunteer based.
Mhm.
But you wake up every day to pursue a mission or goal. You're unlimited resources to do it. You have to get really creative and scrappy. And my charity was around policy advocacy and education for accessibility, physical access. And it was
Mhm.
very event driven. We would go to corporates or we would go to children's hospitals or schools and run events with politicians and Special Olympic athletes to just bring awareness to different accessibility issues. And what I learned there is the power of bringing people together towards a mission. So that's has translated to how when I'm either helping source for a certain vertical, like hosting a dinner for people in robotics so I can meet people in robotics, or hosting a breakfast for people building in consumer so I can share tricks and trades on like how to acquire users if you're launching a new consumer app. So the themes have been the same in terms of like bring people together toward the shared mission, and that was the overlap. But it was really like working at the incubator for nonprofits in Toronto and just meeting entrepreneurs every single day who were, making big sacrifices to pursue something they cared about. It could be climate, it could be homelessness, it could be education, it could be women's health rights. And I was like, I want to work with other people doing this and,
Mhm.
translate it into people solving technical problems. But at its core, I don't think it's that different.
For sure. How, I guess, like when you first joined South Park Common, like what did they have like people in New York, or like was it like were you like one of the first people opening up the New York
Yeah.
office?
So South Park Commons, my wonderful colleague Arian had been in New York
Mhm.
for a long time before.
Mhm.
There was a small office here that had that originally opened because some of our teams in the Bay wanted space in New
Mhm.
York to go, and
Mhm.
then it evolved into like a small community here in New York. And as
Mhm.
part of the third fund that we just raised, we realized that there's a huge opportunity in New York. So I
Mhm.
joined along with a few others last year to move into a much larger space in New York, where we can actually like expand on the work that Arian had been doing to create SPC in New York and really
Mhm.
like make it something that's core to what we're trying to do.
I wonder what would be your kind of like mental roadmap on like, working at South Park Commons. So first of all, like I think from sourcing perspective, you mentioned about like these dinners or like breakfast along these like I guess bigger events. I feel like bigger events is maybe less um about sourcing. It's more about like brand visibility and then like maybe bringing more people into the membership ecosystem. But for I guess like for the curated events, like what were the funnels of like bringing people in, or like what are some kind of ways that you use to like source in general?
Yeah, it's interesting. So our smaller events are usually built around a specific topic. So
Mhm.
it's like I said, it could be robotics, it could be design,
Mhm.
it could be consumer experiences. Um,
Mhm.
and there, it's like, okay, this is an area that we have curiosities about. We want
Mhm.
to bring smart people around who are
Mhm.
researching it, building in it, thinking about it. And I have this belief that if you bring, it's not only about the people in the room, it's about who the people in the room
Mhm.
know. So even if someone's already raised money from someone else in robotics, they probably have 3 friends that are going to one day start something in robotics. So like,
Mhm.
if I can create some value for them, if I can bring them into the SBC ecosystem, even if they'll never join the community, maybe 3 of their friends will. And actually that's how, a few of our best members and fellows have come, is through other people that we didn't end up investing in, or didn't end up getting in the community, but uh, people that they know did, and because they saw the value of SPC by coming to some of our programming. So dinners and breakfasts are one way to do it, but we also do roundtables, we do demo nights, we do other types of events that are curated towards a specific audience to bring them into our ecosystem. And it's not just about them, it's also who they know. And another thing is I'm trying to meet people while they're still employed, while they're maybe not even sure that they have the conviction in themselves to leave to pursue something full time.
Mhm.
And that's like, it's easy to find someone who's already left their job, who maybe has
Mhm.
stealth on their LinkedIn profile or
Mhm.
is talking to investors. Everyone else already knows them. I want to meet
Mhm.
people before that. I want to meet people that are still, finishing their PhD, or still at their job, and we're their first conversation they have about, do I even want to do this? Like, am I
Mhm.
ready to take the risk that starting a company is?
What would be the best way for you to like you mentioned about like maybe inviting one person and they bring their friends is like one way to kind of like shape up the ecosystem. But like how do you kind of like identify the first person? Like
Yeah.
did they have to already raise some money or like what's a whole
Yeah.
selection process of that?
I think you have to figure out what your right to play is. So when I
Mhm.
moved to New York 4.5 years ago, I got some advice from someone that was, go and meet every Canadian in tech.
Mhm.
I had never I didn't study or work in the States. I grew up in
Mhm.
Toronto. I worked in the UK, and then I just moved to New York just after COVID.
Mhm.
And I didn't know anyone. Like at Expa, I was
Mhm.
the only person in New York. They didn't have anyone else to help me here.
Mhm.
So they said, go meet every Canadian in tech. And I did that. And
Mhm.
Canadians just wanted to help other Canadians. So I started building my network that way. And I started hosting events for other Canadians, and then it expanded because, this Canadian founder introduces you to the person on their board, or this Canadian investor introduces you to this company that's about to fundraise, or this Canadian person introduces you to their roommate who's starting a company, and it starts to compound. But I started with like, what was my right to play, and my right to play was other Canadians. And that's going to be different for everyone, and it doesn't always have to be like in-person engagements. It can be writing. So if
Mhm.
you're a really good writer,
Mhm.
start putting your content out and start sending it to people that you look up to. Just DM them on Twitter, be like, hey, I think you'd like this article I wrote. And if they do like it and it's good, they might share it. And next
Mhm.
thing you know, you have other people sharing all the writing that you're doing, and people want to meet you because the effects compound. For you, it could be your podcast, right? Like, every time someone comes on your podcast and another person listens to it, and they're like, wow, Grace is really well connected. Wow, she asks thoughtful questions. So like, you just have to put out in the universe what you know you think you're best to put out, and then hope it compounds. And I got advice from Michael Dempsey a few years ago, who's the GP at Compound Ventures in New York, and he said, one of the hardest things to do in our industry is tasteful self promotion. So you
Mhm.
have to do what you're great at, but you have to do it in a way that other people are talking about it. So for
Mhm.
me, I want people to talk about the events of mine that they come to. For someone
Mhm.
else, it might be like, I want them to talk about the articles that I'm writing. For you, it might be, I want them to talk about the podcast I'm doing. But yeah, like, you get started by just leaning into what you're best at.
I wonder since like I feel like there's so many sectors of things that like SPC could invest in from like, fintech to biotech to like CPG and stuff. Not CPG particular, but like I guess like from like just like consumer in general. Like how do you guys like categorize the deal flow for each category? Since like, you could be doing like a consumer dinner or like you could be doing like demo day for I don't know AI agents or something. Like what are your way personally to like CRM the people that flunks in, and then like how do you kind of like separate them from like here's our like targets for like migrating them into membership, or like how do you kind of set that KPI for yourself when you're like doing these like events?
Yeah, I think we it's obviously something that every organization needs to figure out as they scale.
Mhm.
The beauty of SPC is we have a pretty big team, of people with very diverse skill sets, and
Mhm,
everyone leans into what they're great at. Like my colleague here
mhm,
in New York, Gopal, like he loves demo nights and he's great at it. So he throws a lot of demo nights.
mhm,
Um, Jonathan is like our storyteller and he loves to create incredible content and marketing material. So everyone leans into the assets that they think or the artifacts that they think they can create the best at, and hope that translates. We don't. I don't. At least I don't want to view it transactionally. Like, oh, I did
mhm,
X and then I got Y
mhm,
member, or I did X and I got Y funded company. Like, the idea is, it all compounds.
mhm,
Multi attribution marketing. Like you buy the shoes because you saw the Facebook ad, the billboard ad, and the
mhm,
podcast commercial. Like, it's a mix of all the things that you get to see and
mhm.
hear that lead to the same end goal.
I wonder, so like, do you, I guess, like for the different subsector, do you personally write your own thesis or like there's like, 10 company that I'm targeting to like meet per month or like, is there any like goals that you set for yourself in terms of like sourcing from the different funnels and or just like I guess having a thesis for each sector or since you guys are very, I guess, founder driven when it comes to selection, does the idea plays into any kind of games or like the general vibe?
We don't have sector theses because, as you said, we are founder driven, but we
Mhm,
call them like axes of curiosity.
mhm,
So we do have areas, very broad areas, that
mhm,
we are interested in hearing how people are thinking about it. So
mhm,
I've written about this before, is like multiplayer AI interfaces. So like
mhm,
ChatGPT is very single player,
mhm,
Perplexity is very single player, but Notion is multiplayer. Like you and I can be in the same Notion doc. Why can't we be in
mhm,
the same, LLM interface? Like I don't know what that would look like. I'm not saying I'm looking for a company building exactly this, but
mhm,
I'm curious about what multiplayer AI interfaces look like. Uh,
mhm,
and I'm curious about like what are the different form factors of hardware for data capture, and that could be in healthcare, fintech, or consumer. It's not that like I'm saying we want this exact company, but I'm just
mhm,
curious who's exploring, who's building hardware for data capture, and what are they doing with it. So again, it's like I think we all have different areas of curiosity at SPC,
mhm,
and we publish them. So
mhm,
they're not call for startups. They're just like, hey, are you curious about this too? Have you
mhm.
been thinking about this too? And we want to hear how you've been thinking about it.
For sure. I wonder, so like since I feel like you mentioned that like, you guys would interview the founders to join the program and obviously there must be like, thousands of people to apply. Um, what would be the curated way to like, just like evaluate the different teams on the same benchmark? Because I would assume like each person would from like the team or to like interview people differently? And do you guys have like a checklist for like this person is like, 5 out of 10 at like, acquiring customer or like, is there any like
We take
cohesive thing?
we take this very, 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 very seriously.
Mhm,
When we get into founder fellowship, like application time, like
mhm,
every two, at least two, if not three people on the team read every application.
mhm,
And that's because, as you said, like I might view something one way and someone else might view something the other way. And we want
mhm,
to make sure that like we're not, missing things because I have one bias and you have one bias.
mhm,
And then our goal of like, the thousands of applications we get to like interview a lot of people. And then
mhm,
it's, for, the people in my life can tell
mhm,
you that for, 6 or so weeks, like I'm a zombie. Like all we're doing is reading applications and interviewing people. Um,
mhm.
and it's something that is very time consuming and done with a lot of care and affection. And there's no science to it. Like it's just, you just got to put the energy and time into it. We
What
don't,
about, yeah. Oh,
it's
sorry.
not
Keep
something
going.
I think you can have AI do. We can't just have AI read application. Like, sure, it can help like look for certain things, but also ultimately, like there's a human touch to everything.
For sure. When I guess when you guys read these applications, like I guess do you like rank them or like do you I guess like do you guys use like so for example, if you got like 1,000 application, I feel like at some point it's like very hard to like funnel the just like the knowledge into something, or like I guess like it's very hard to like rank, or like do you just do like a general vibe check at the beginning and then filter out half of it, and then each person is going through like maybe more and having more emphasize energy into a certain type of people, or like I guess like I just feel like it's gonna be so hard to like filter out like 1,000 applications in general to like down
We
to
we
20.
get we get way more than 1,000. It takes a lot of time, and I that's really all it is. It just takes a lot of time.
What about, I guess, like, do you have people that you would like, even they may not be in the program, like they may not be in the membership, but like you want to bring them in? Is there any kind of like exceptions, or like people that are like, you're like manually thinking about like actively trying to acquire into the program, or
Yeah,
like,
and those are the kinds of people that we would invite to like our more smaller events. So like,
mhm,
maybe someone is working at a company, and maybe they're working at Anthropic on the data team, and we want to do something like that. And
mhm,
we'll invite them to a dinner, we'll invite them to a talk, we'll invite them to a demo. Like, we're just trying to like be there for them and and show them the value of,
mhm,
show the value before they join SPC.
mhm,
It's not going to always translate, but like generally I would say that those people, even if they never join SPC, like they add value. They help other people in the community.
mhm,
They're happy to talk to our founders. They're happy to share their expertise. We do, you know, our design partner. Well, one of our like visiting partners, this very famous designer named Soleo, and he's been doing these design talks at SPC where he just brings in very famous designers
mhm,
from different companies to just talk about being a designer. And
mhm,
like, those people are likely never going to join SPC, but
mhm,
their 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 insights are so valuable. Like, these are the best designers in the world sharing, just
mhm.
coming to like an off the record chat with our community. It's like, it's okay that they're never going to join SPC. It's like
What
to bring them in. Yeah.
For sure. What would be the like, I guess like I'll keep this to the last question and then we'll do like a 30-second fire run. I wonder for the offline chats, like what do you think were different between the like, the public chat and then the offline chat? Do you think it's like primarily similar, or is there like more insights that you feel like people don't want to share publicly?
I think that it's more that the offline chats we have are smaller, they're more
Mhm,
intimate, and they're more curated. So,
mhm,
there's a lot more interaction with the speaker. The people in the audience can ask questions and talk to them. And a lot of times the speakers hang around afterwards to like meet people one on one,
mhm,
because it's a smaller group.
mhm,
Um, the larger chats are, you know, sure, maybe in front of 200 people, there's things that they don't say that they would say in front of like a
mhm.
room of 30. But I would say still people are very open in the larger chats too. I don't know if it's about like filtering themselves. I think it's just the intimacy that they can have with the audience is probably the bigger difference.
Mm, I wanna be mindful of time. Okay, we'll wrap with a 1-minute fire round. What's your favorite book?
Fiction, Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, which is such a cliche because everyone read it very recently, and nonfiction, Never Split the Difference.
Love. Chris Voss was a past guest on our
That's
show.
awesome. I didn't
Yeah,
know.
he is amazing. Who would you invite to your dinner party?
Bill Simmons is my dream dinner party guest.
Who made the biggest impact in your career?
Um, Probably my high school English teacher.
Where can we find you outside of work?
Outside of work, I rollerblade a lot, so you could see me rollerblading around Manhattan.
Wow, that's so interesting and specific. Love. Well, Dylan, thank you so much for coming on the show today. It was such a fun conversation.
Thanks, Grace.
Let me quickly end